Hello, hello, it's review day. We shall see who is joining us on this fine day. I'm sharing a different screen.
Hello.
Hello, Peyton. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
Doing all right. Doing all right. Just been finishing up doing some brainstorming here of, well, not really brainstorming, but trying to make sure that you guys are prepared for the test over this.
Did you see my comment back to you?
I don't recall. Hold on a second. Okay, everybody. So somewhere, don't have to answer every question, although I would encourage you to think about all the questions because they will come up on the test. I'm going to get rid of something here because, well, maybe I am. Because I moved it to the, I copied it onto the next page. So somewhere on the Jamboard, you can use sticky notes, whatever, but you need to contribute somewhere. That'll be your Jamboard. But all the 13 pages of the Jamboard have questions or sample problems or statements to help get ready for the test. So for instance, your job is a major factor in what 5 areas. If you look on page 8 in your booklet, then you'll see lifestyle, money management habits, financial goals, future jobs, health and happiness. Okay, you're not going to have to list those, but you're going to see something about a major factor in one of those areas, and you want to know that it's your job. All right. There's going to be a couple situational things that are multiple choice, and you want to remember there's not really, some of this, there's not really a question. It's just something for me to kind of go over with you so that you make a better choice on the multiple choice. So sometimes money is less important compared to the schedule and the ability that allows you to do what you want with your free time. So maybe it's less important to me about money because I like to be off in the evenings, because maybe I am a musician and I have a side job in the evenings. All right, so I don't want to work nights, or I don't want to work weekends. Or perhaps I choose to have a lesser paying job, but I am living near a lake because I like to fish a lot. Okay, so sometimes money is the least of someone's concerns. All right, so there's a couple of questions if you kind of keep that in mind, that's going to help you. It's just like deciding for someone, not that you know them personally, but it'll make more sense. Remember that an opportunity cost, and I'm stressing this because that was not always understood on one of the assignments about what's the opportunity cost of like going to school. So like opportunity cost is something that you give up for something else. So if you go to school, yes, there's financial costs, but the opportunity cost of going to school is that you like might have to work less hours, might be away from your family. That's the opportunity cost, is like the next best thing you would be doing, basically. So it's not just money. It could be money, but it could also be like what you would do with your time otherwise. And then I put some math problems on the second frame. And so I'm gonna I'm not going to trust that other people are going to fill these in correctly. So please pay attention and read, because there may be things like that it's for 2 weeks, not just 1 week. So, but I would probably guess if it's multiple choice that the answer for just 1 week might also be there. So if I worked 30 hours a week for 2 weeks at $8.50 an hour, so I would just be doing 30 times 2. So that would be 60 hours, and then 60 times $8.50. And this says gross pay. So just, that's it. We don't worry about taking anything off. So, oops, I just jack that up. So 30 times 2 was 60. And then we're going to take that 60 times the $8.50 an hour, which I think, you guys check me, I got $510. Either of you have a calculator to, I believe that's right. 60 times 8 would be 480, and half of 60 is 30. So $510. So gross pay, just multiply the number of the total number of hours times the amount per hour. This would not be any overtime because it's just 30 hours a week.
Are
Now,
we filling it out on the Jamboard or?
I'm filling things out on the Jamboard right now. You guys need to answer any 2 things, just like a couple things on the Jamboard.
Okay.
And I don't know why I don't know if it's because
I might be doing that.
Huh?
Is it possible for me to change it on my, I think I'm the one changing your stuff. I'm not going to touch anything.
No, it's okay. I'll just put I'll make it a sticky note instead. And that's the other thing, that people can change other people's stuff. So we did 30 times 2, which was 60, and then 60 times 8.50, 50 cents was $510. So that was gross pay. All right. So basically, like, whatever you answer, you would just like go to one of these things. Like, there's going to be a couple of these that are more like brainstorm ideas. And so I'm not going to go through every potential thing. People are just going to be able to add things to it. But considering math, I'll just make sure that I walk through these. So this was the first one. I'll put it over there. Now, if this person got a 50-cent raise, we would assume that means 50 cents per hour, since they're paid per hour. And they work 36 hours 1 week and 44 hours the next week. Now, this comes up on the test, and if you've worked someplace, you're probably already aware, but just in case you're not, over 40 hours a week, you typically receive overtime of time and a half. All right. So there are some exceptions to that, but that's pretty typical. So the second part here, I'm going to put on a blue sticky note. So if they receive 50 cents an hour raise, they went from $8.50 to $9. I'm going to take $9 times 80 hours. I got 80 by doing, well, maybe I better. Well, what I did was 36 plus 44. That would be $720. Now, 4 of those hours were overtime. You get time and a half. I already gave them the time, but they get paid like half again for that. So I could do 450 times 4. That would be the extra pay for those hours. Now, the other way to do that same thing easy thing, would be that you would take just the 76 hours times 9. And then you would also, then you would do 4 hours times 1350. Because that's what they're making for those 4 hours. I promise it should still come out the same. 684 and 54. 684 and 54 would still be 738. You're not going to be asked to show your work. You're just going to be asked for the answer, by the way. So this is how I got this. And then if this was the gross pay for the second one, then if after the raise, so for this second situation, what would the net pay be? And they're just going to straight up tell you the total deductions is a certain amount. So that just means we need to subtract. So we just would need to then take my answer from before, which was $738. So I would be taking my $738 minus the, what does that say, 217.90 maybe? Yep. Which would equal $520.10. So when you have a question that says net pay, you need to find the gross minus the deductions. There could be a lot harder math problems, but there aren't. Well, some of you might think these are hard anyway, but they're pretty manageable. So with the time and a half, you either take those 4 hours that are overtime, that are above 40, you can pay them once regular and then the halftime separate, or you could have done $13.50 times those 4 hours, but then you don't include it in the regular pay. If you do the math both ways there, I came up with 738, the same. So these are actually multiple choice, but I would just about guarantee that some of the choices are like, if you forget one of the steps, there's an answer. I also did put on the test, I added a little box to say, like, remind people about time and a half. So trying to help people out a bit there. This first one, again, there's nothing up here. It's just a statement that if you see something that talks about an employer sponsored retirement plan, it just means that they match the retirement to a certain extent. It does not mean that they're the only person contributing. Okay, it doesn't mean they're the only ones contributing. In fact, usually they don't, not always, but oftentimes they don't contribute unless you do. Some places do, but just because it's employer sponsored does not mean completely employer paid. Another math one here, if this is the annual salary, and there could also be a statement that says it's, $15.80 an hour. You don't care, okay? Ignore that. And there's so many paid days, you don't care about that either. When they want to know about the total compensation, you just want to take the annual salary and then figure out how much they're paying for the whole year for the health insurance. So in this case, I'm going to try to do this way because that did not. So in this case, the $200 times 12, because it was each month. So they're paying in $2,400 plus the annual salary. And so $34,840. So there might be extra information there. Don't try to work it in. Don't try to make the problem harder than it is and figure out like how much each sick day's worth. You don't need to do all that. Just take that annual salary, figure out how much they're paying for the health insurance for the year so that you can add it onto the annual salary. And then what kinds of things have the potential to boost your earning potential? So trying to find different ways to word some of these questions is always interesting. So things like college, training, summer jobs, internships. Those would all be things that could boost your earning potential. So it wouldn't all have to be college, like all kinds of trainings, getting certifications, things that might prevent it. Oh, I guess could put like military service. That would kind of go along with college and training, but things that might prevent it, job hopping. Okay, so being a job hopper doesn't usually turn out well. One, because places that you go like to see more stability, and also like typically after you stay a certain amount of time, then you get raises. But if you're constantly changing, you might never be there for the raise. So job hopping might be called something else, but you know what job hopping means, like changing jobs frequently. I'm sure there are other things that prevent it too, but that's one. I guess not doing all the other things. Don't get training. Don't have an education. And then these are some of the words that are, as you can tell, going to be part of your matching. So you want to be familiar with these words. And I know at least some of these are on page 12. I see, for instance, apprenticeship is on page 12. Keep in mind that if you just look them up in a dictionary or online, they may not be exactly the same wording or definition, but these words are not so close to each other that they should be confused. All right, so don't particularly see that as an issue. I would point out that deferment means postponing repayment, right? So like student loan deferment means like you got done with college. Well, one, it's deferred until you're out of college, but then to say like, oh, I still don't have a job, so it gets deferred. So it's like a time period goes without you having to make payments. Gross pay is, of course, before any deductions. Net pay would be after deductions. That would also be called your take-home pay. Work study program is just typically where not quite what sometimes people think. Like it's usually a form of financial aid where they're giving students jobs. It's not like apprenticeship or an internship necessarily, just a way to earn money through college. But typically those places that hire you when you're work study, they get reimbursed your wages through some federal program so that it doesn't really come out of their budget to hire someone who has work study. Like I said, I don't think that of the ones they chose that there's should be much confusion. Commission is when you get paid like a % of your sales. commission. All right. Yes, good. On why would people start their own business? Gives you freedom to grow, be your own boss. So be your own boss would include like making your own decisions, right? So if you would rather own your own restaurant instead of work for someone else, if you own your own restaurant, you could decide, what hours do I want to be open? What kind of food do I want to serve? How do I want to advertise? So you have a lot more control. So maybe, or like if you had a store, if it's your store, you get to decide, what are we going to sell? Who's going to work here? There is a question that you're going to come upon, and it might be true, false. And it talks about someone's tips being taxable. And we all may know someone who's had a job where they got tips and they did not claim them, but legally they are considered income and as such are taxable. So we're going to assume that the person in the question is following the letter of the law. So just remember that tips are considered taxable income. And it's not because they fall behind in their work. Money management is the #1 reason that students drop out of higher education. So it might mean because they got into some debt and then they have to work more, so that, you know, it could be hand in hand. But money management is actually the #1 reason. So somewhere in a question, it's going to be helpful to know that, because it might tell you that something else is not right. Okay, so I was in a hurry and I did not add to this. What are other options aside from borrowing? So Peyton has said taking out a loan or applying for grants. So taking out a loan would still be considered borrowing, so don't put that, but I didn't have that on there at the time. So applying for grants, where else could money come from? I don't have the money right now. So actually, if you look on page 17, get a job, right? Okay, get a job so you can make more money. Military, because military provides money for college either after, or they provide you training while you're in the military, or both. Applying for grants or scholarships. So difference between a grant and a scholarship. Scholarship typically is based upon some kind of merit, like you had good grades, something like that. Both would be things you would not be paying back. A grant might be more, could be more like just based on your need, like federal grants. But sometimes grants are also merit based. If you have an employer who they pay for, you know, like they do tuition reimbursement or they do training. If you can test out of college credits so that you don't have to take as many classes, those are some things. 529 plans. So that's an, that would be something else actually, Bree, for you to think about. So, and I did this when Derek was in school. I actually, so you can put up to $5,000 in a 529 plan, and Indiana gives you a 20% back on your Indiana state taxes. So you put in 5,000, but then by December 31st, but then when you file your taxes come say February, you get 1,000 of it back. Now it means you got to have some money on hand, right? but it's a 20% payoff right then.
Huh.
And you can actually take it, like, you could put it in December 31st, and then, now you can't do it like the next day, but like 2 weeks later, probably by 2 weeks later, you could actually write the check for your tuition. So, and then, because I did that a couple times with Derek, then, now it did mean that I couldn't claim some other tax things, like some other tax credits for that, because I had used 529 money. But kind of like, even just thinking like, if you took out a loan and then put the money in the 529, I don't know, that probably gets too crazy. But anyhow, in the state of Indiana, at least that 20%, I mean, it also, like, they invested in it, can grow, but we did that every year for, since probably Sherilyn was about 5. And it meant we always got money back, like hundreds of dollars, like close to $1,000 for state. But we were putting in 5,000, but even if it didn't grow a lot, we got 20% of it back right away. So it was always worth it. So,
That's something to look into.
yeah. And like I said, you don't have to leave it in there long term. Like when Derek was going to school, I was still, like, it would be like the 1st of December, and I would put money in to make sure I had the, because at that point we hadn't started putting the money in for Sherilyn yet, to make sure that we had made a contribution by the end of the year. So we would get the $1,000 back on our taxes the next year. And I would put it in, and then like 2 weeks later, I'd write the check for his tuition, and I'd have them send me the, like, I need it back, because I had qualifying expense to get it back. So it wasn't like, well, it has to be in there a year. So, but it does take some cash flow, right? You got to have that initial amount to put in. So, but it basically saved us 1,000 of that. Some ways to control college expenses. So some of those things are the same things about what could you do to get money, right? Scholarships, the how can you, so there's some crossover. By the way, these things are only things you need to do like 2 examples, so you don't have to have like a arm-long list. But also to control college expenses, like, be careful of things like changing your major, or if you could finish, like if you could finish in less time, or, living at home instead of living on campus for a traditionally aged student. Catch-up classes. So in other words, if you go and they say, oh, you're not really ready for this class, you've got to take this class. So making sure that you're ready. So avoiding some of the things like they're on page 15, which is just like what I just talked about. And then, but then some of the same things we talked about how we could pay for it. Those are other ways to control our expenses, because if someone else is paying for it, then we're not going to have as much expenses. And then some of the common health, common benefits employers offer. Yep. Health insurance, paid days off, retirement fund, tuition reimbursement, dental insurance, uniforms. So we got lots of things we could list. Just in the insurance part of things, health insurance, dental insurance, vision insurance, short-term disability, life insurance. Again, doesn't mean everybody offers it, but those are common. Wellness things like wellness programs, which might mean, like reduced price gym membership or whatever. I think if I remember right, this question says common benefits they offer in addition to paid time off. So you want to be able to come up with for at least a couple others. So, but there are lots there. And let's see. Like page 27, 26 and 27, paid leave, health insurance, retirement savings, life and disability, tuition assistance, training, employee discounts, childcare assistance. That's not as common, but if someone listed one of those things, I'm not going to mark it wrong. It's still benefits. Free meals, gym, parking, company vehicle, lots and lots. So I only have to list 2, and there's probably 15 listed in the book. And then, so cost of living, what kind of things affect the cost of living someplace? Like what kind of cost? So think about all your basic needs, really. So housing, food, utilities. Those are some of the big ones: housing, food, utilities, gas, retail goods. So all of those kind of things would play into cost of living. Housing is usually the biggest one, and why, like, for instance, our cost of living is so much cheaper than so many places. But any of those things that you're paying money for, and typically, you know, they're looking at like basic things, like things you have to purchase: gasoline, utilities, all those things. And so when you're trying to decide where to live and work, cost of living would be one consideration. And then other considerations, this is going to be thinking of things like that are kind of more personal, but also like what's the unemployment, you know, what's the job outlook there? Do they have openings for what I want to do? Family, are there moving costs? What's the weather? So like just really, if you're trying to decide, traffic. So again, these are still the things like you only need to think about, only have to have 2 things to be able to list. So I don't foresee, if someone has at all been engaged in class, that should be difficult. But there's, I'm trying to see if there was actually a list in the book, but I don't think that that's a hard list to come up with. W-4s, remember W-4s are how you indicate your number of allowances, and so that you have the proper amount of taxes taken out. And we did not do the activity where we actually filled one out. So there's like a second part of the question for that. And I just like typed in the answer. So hopefully no one just takes it out or something. Because it asks how many allowances they should have, and we didn't really practice that. I mean, you could go online and figure it out, but what can you do while out of work? That kind of sounds kind of vague. Basically to improve employment later, right? So you could improve skills. So this could be maybe free online classes, other education. You could maintain networking. So like if you already had, so like if I decided I wanted to take 6 months off and I'm not going to work, but I want to be able to have a job. Maybe I can't come back here, but I want to find another job. Then I may want to make sure that I'm in touch with all my teacher friends who might, know of an opening at their school when I'm ready to work again. So that's some of the things you could do. And then when you have gaps in your employment history, this is kind of that, you know, like, I think we had something on one of the questions, like be honest. Don't like blame other people. That kind of thing. So try to stay positive. Even if why you became unemployed wasn't a positive situation, staying positive about how you spent that time is a good idea. Someone is unlocking my door. Hello? Nada, zilch. I did take a shower this morning, Laura. I did take a shower this morning. I know no one's been here like I smell, but I did take a shower this morning.
I feel like I am too. I'm so hot. It feels really good here.
Yeah, I got the nice door open, so. Miss Laura's checking in every period to see if we got people in the room, and I don't, so. Which I actually knew, because usually there's only one girl who might come during this period, and she had left a message that she for sure wasn't. So. More notice than I usually have. So I knew I was going to be alone. Let's see what other things here. Did I just add a bunch of stuff at the back? Probably. Need to get rid of these little guys. This one can get deleted. This one can get deleted. All right, so I did not leave everything on here for other people. We've kind of talked through it, and if you ladies have things that you're like, hey, I was trying to write stuff down, I didn't get something, I am happy to answer those. Or if you feel like you need another example for one of these things, but I'm just going to kind of put that out there. And if you students out there in virtual land have taken the time to watch this and listen, we've also talked about those things. And if not, it is open book. So there we go. Let's see.